I don't know that anybody is more misaligned than we are, or malaligned. It is unbelievable. We have about 150 people that work in our foundation all across the country. About 80% are practicing Christians. Our largest growth area, folks, is actually evangelical Christians. They're on our advisory board. They donate to us. They come to us as clients. Let me explain which Christians we are going after. If I'm drawing a circle in the air here, this represents Christendom. Let's draw a line down the middle. On this half over here, we've got mainline Protestants and mainline Roman Catholics who follow in Star Trek parlance as their prime directive the Great Commandment. One of the last things, Jesus talks about it in the book of Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount, two things. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, and heart. Second thing, very Rodney King-esque, can't we all get along? It's just the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated, says Jesus in the book of Matthew. The Great Commandment, which actually predated Jesus in the Pentateuch, or the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And before that, it was before there were Jews. And I want to, if anyone's here from, I'm sure they are, the Tulsa world, I'm a Jew, a controversial Jew. Don't stand up if you're here. I'm sure we'll talk later. Before the Torah, there, of course, was the Code of Hammurabi. Now let's go to this side of the circle, because we're getting closer to the kind of Christians that we battle with. On this side of the circle are evangelical and fundamentalist Christians. The synonym for fundamentalist that we use is Dominionist Christian. You can go ahead and Google that if you want to. A lot of people haven't heard about it. So on this side of the circle, and again in Star Trek parlance or vernacular, they don't follow the Great Commandment that their brother and sister Christians over here do. They follow the Great Commission. See Mark 16:15, Matthew 28:19. One of the last things Jesus is supposed to have talked about when he said to his disciples, go and make disciples of all nations. You see, it's an order. Get out there and make Christians like me. You heard Bob mention my first book came out from St. Martin's Press, big publisher in New York in 2006, with God on our side, subtitle, One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military. Well, I made a mistake, a boo-boo. I didn't realize that till several years later. I shouldn't have said evangelical, because what I didn't know is there's a second north-south line on this side of the circle. The evangelicals live here. The fundamentalists or dominionists live here. The difference is every fundamentalist or dominionist is by necessity an evangelical, but not vice versa. And yes, they all follow the Great Commission, go and make disciples of all nations. But the evangelicals will say, they all want to convert everybody in this room to become proselytized, become Christians like them, but the evangelicals will say, whoa, I have to comport my zeal to transform you all into Christians in accordance with the time, the place, and the manner restrictions put forth by our governing social contract and our experiment here in America called the United States Constitution. Not just the First Amendment, separation of church and state, but also Clause 3, Article 6, which says no religious test in this country. No religious test. You also cannot violate Department of Defense directives, instructions, and regulations. The fundamentalists, and I can't tell if there's any children here. My wife tells me never to cuss or to use vulgar signs like I just did. Fundamentalists will say, to hell with that. There is no time. My brothers and sisters, there is no place. There is no manner in which you can restrict us from proselytizing their weaponized gospel of Jesus Christ. Free range, we can scream Jesus in a crowded theater. And Mikey, Weinstein, and the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, if you try to restrict us, you're the bad guys. You're the bad ones. Well, I often ask audiences, does anyone remember, since we are in America, what the first commandment is? You can't have any other gods. Then you got the First Amendment. Oh, yes, you can. The fight that brings me to Tulsa today, that causes all of this controversy all the time, that causes some very nice people to be here trying to protect everybody today, is simply the fight between the Great Commission and the Great Constitution. But in this country, we separate physical and metaphysical, spiritual and temporal, church and state. If you don't like it, you can go to North Korea if you can get in. Leave America if you can't believe in democracy and our Constitution. And keep in mind now, remember how I've given you the diagram. Evangelicals flock to us. Even the evangelicals are not Christian enough for the dominionists or fundamentalists. This happens all the time. We picked up 7 new clients since I've been here yesterday afternoon in Tulsa. Let me make something clear to you, Jim Bridenstine. And I know some of your folks are here today, which is great. Maybe you'll have enough guts to come forward and talk. But, you know, once again, in this country, your personal fundamentalist Christian rights will always be trumped by the civil rights of your fellow American citizens. Now, the religious right has started a number of vile statements about me, besides the controversial Jew thing. Atheist, I'm not. I keep trying to be. I'm not there yet. I keep working. I fasted on Yom Kippur, and I still pray 3 times a day in Hebrew, particularly when watching Dodger games. Communist, leftist, this latest one that came out from the Billy Graham organization, evangelistic organization, 72 hours ago, an entire sidebar in their Decision flagship magazine. Mikey Weinstein, one of the most dangerous men in America. And then the other one was, they said, I was, I guess, perhaps the most fervent, and I didn't think they would even know that word. That's 2 syllables there. Anti-witnessing, activists in the country. It's amazing because I wanted to show that to one of our sergeants I can't give you his name or where he's stationed. It's here in the CONUS, continental United States. A few months ago, he's an evangelical Christian, and his commander drove his car to where his unit is located, and was sporting a new bumper sticker. You know the Christian fish symbol, of course, right? Well, his commander is a rabid atheist, and inside of the Christian fish symbol was the word Satan. And it really upset this particular sergeant, who, of course, was several levels below the commander in the organization. The sergeant went to the base JAGs, military lawyers, and the chaplains, and they said, well, we don't really want to touch that. It's probably his First Amendment right. And then he said, well, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to go call Mikey Weinstein and the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. Apparently, there was this gasp of, he eats Christians for breakfast. Are you crazy? Well, Sergeant Smith, not his real name, called me. We realized that was completely inappropriate and wrong, because the next thing that you'll be seeing will be a Star of David on fire, because all Jews are going to burn in hell, and of course your mind runs from there. We contacted the Pentagon. It took us a couple of weeks. The commander was called in by his commander. Remember, our client here is an evangelical Christian, and ordered not to drive the car on base or take the sticker off, the bumper sticker. He took the bumper sticker off. Now, that doesn't get out there. That doesn't get out there. It is unbelievable. And I'm not attacking their belief. Most of our clients believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and most of them probably believe I'm going to burn in hell. That isn't what this is about. What it's about is not being forced to adopt any particular religious view by our government. It's whenever a religious view engages the machinery of the state, the awesome power, financial heft, and prestige of our government, particularly where the war machine is. Well, we've seen when this happens. Whenever that happens, we don't end up with little ponds, lakes, streams, and creeks. We end up with oceans and oceans of blood. You know our species, Homo sapiens. You know what we do when that happens. Make it clear, it's a very good point. The Dominionists want to replace our democracy with theology. They want the death penalty if a teenager talks back to their parents. They want you stoned to death. Certainly, you do not want to be gay anywhere near them. So Dennis Rodman better watch out. I can tell you this, that anything that violates the Levitican schematics of anything that's wrong, it's death, 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 death. What percent of our military is Dominionist at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question.
We don't know for sure. I can tell you that our best estimate is about 84% of the chaplains corps are evangelicals. But remember, a lot of evangelicals are our friends. We think about a third of that are Dominionists. But remember, just let me finish here. When you graduate from West Point, Annapolis of the Air Force Academy, on that day as a second lieutenant, you outrank between 80 to 90% of the U.S. military. You outrank. Hitler had 7.9% in his National Socialist movement. Stalin had 2.8% in his movement. We think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 to 34% of the U.S. military are Dominionist Christians. Like I said before, our biggest job is to make sure that proselytizing can occur. It's sitting there and saying Mikey Weinstein hates all Christians is like saying that I hate everybody who drives a motor vehicle. And it's true. I do hate everyone who drives a motor vehicle if they're driving DUI or otherwise breaking the law. What's so hard? We're not a complex meal like Chateaubriand. We're a freaking hamburger. How hard is this to understand? Your question? Thank you, dear. When we founded this nation, we made it clear that we're not going to look at your religious faith to determine whether or not you're a person of value. We're not going to do that. And that's what's so special about this country. Yes, others have done it too, but we did it in a big way. And now that's under attack by people that support your elected representatives in the state, people like Jim Bridenstine, who should know better. He's a former, apparently, naval pilot. How dare you try to hold hostage the Pentagon funding bill, to the fact that we want free-range proselytizing? How dare you? Next question. Yeah. I'll say one thing, though, because you guys are mentioning the concept of secularism, agnosticism, atheism, whatever. And I tell people to fight Campus Crusade for Christ, which is on so many different campuses. In the last few years, we've had something called the Secular Students Alliance. Some of you may have heard about it at hundreds of universities and colleges. And I speak at a lot of these, and I try to remind them that if you are someone who doesn't believe in any of the Abrahamic perspectives of theology, Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, or whatever, or you don't believe that there's any sort of a supreme being, please understand a couple of things. You understand why you scare the shit out of people of faith. And that is because if you're right that there's nothing, that it'll eventually dawn on them that if they're right, then I'm nothing but a sack of meat sitting on a rock in the middle of outer space. There's nothing, and I can't do anything. I know nothing other than the fact that I'm going to die and I'm helpless to stop that. So be respectful of people of faith, just like you respect your own views. Don't denigrate them the way they've denigrated you. They deserve respect. Remember, they are your brothers and sisters also. They're entitled to their views. And that's something that's very, very important, because I've run across fundamentalist atheists too, like that commander with the denigrating the Christian fish symbol. I don't know if Christianity is right, or Judaism, or Hinduism, or any of the other. I mean, there's almost 40,000, I think 41,000 different denominations of Christianity alone. That isn't the point.